One thing we realized with COVID is that how important it is to actually get on the farms and see
Hmm.
cattle and see manure and see forage and feeds. And that was really one thing I missed a lot. Um, and through the pandemic, we actually created like a lot of new contracts overseas and whatnot with farms that just simply want us to do remote work.
Well, welcome everybody to this episode of the Dairy Podcast Show. I'm your host for today, Gail Carpenter. I'm the State Dairy Extension Specialist at Iowa State University. And I'm joined today by a very special guest from the Great White North, Daniel Scothorn. So Daniel is joining us from Alberta today, but your home is in Nova Scotia, or where you're from is Nova Scotia. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. So we just made the move to Canmore, Alberta, and that's a little further away from the Holstein population of where we lived in Nova Scotia. But there's certainly plenty of elk here if I get bored and I want to spend some time around ruminants. So
Yeah. Are there bison up there too? There must be bison.
you know what? There's that's a good question. Wild. I don't think there's. Put me on the spot, Gail. I'm not sure what the bison
Oh
wild
no.
population situation is here. I know there's lots of bison in Wyoming where we just came through this summer, but yeah, I don't know what the population of bison is here.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to Google that when we're done.
Yeah, yeah.
So, for our American listeners who might not be as familiar with Canadian geography, where's Nova Scotia and where's Alberta?
Yeah, so Nova Scotia is, as we always say to the Americans, you drive to Maine and you take a right. So it's on the east coast of Canada. It's one of the most easterly provinces. So we're stuck out in the middle of the Atlantic there. So you can imagine the fun that dairy farmers have making forage there during the summer. And so that's where I grew up on a dairy farm, Gail.
Mm-hmm.
And then after spending some significant amount of my life in Nova Scotia, I went to Western Canada for my graduate studies. And that's where I was invited by Dr. David Christensen from the University of
Oh,
Saskatchewan to do a master's on feeding different canola and pea and flax and different concoctions that we extruded. So it was an excellent experience. And then we were living in Nova Scotia for 20 years after that. And then just recently, we just decided to move to Alberta, actually, like I said, it wasn't just the elk that drew us here. It was the mountains and just the great appreciation for agriculture that we have,
yeah.
that we see here in Alberta. And just it's in the culture and the DNA of Albertans. So it's great to be around this excitement. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And do you have producers that you work with out in the West too? Or what's your territory? You're independent, right? So your territory is wherever you want it to be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, that's one thing I'm blessed by is that the thing about working in the dairy industry is that there's cows everywhere is pretty well, right? So it's
Yeah.
exciting. We can work in different areas of the country or different parts of the world, and it doesn't matter where we go. We seem to always find dairy cattle. So I have a lot of stories around that. But as it stands right now, we primarily focus on the East Coast of
Mm-hmm.
Canada and a little bit of work overseas. So what I do is like a lot of consultants. I do a monthly or roughly a monthly rotation through our clients, which are dairy farmers primarily on the East Coast, and then when I'm back here in Alberta, actually, it gives me time 2-3 weeks in between to work with the rations and do a lot of the communication actually when I'm here.
Elevate animal performance with Berg & Schmidt Animal Nutrition, your trusted ally in excellence. Their high-quality feed ingredients like coated nutrients and fat powders provide ruminants with extra energy, boosting health, productivity, and cost efficiency. Unleash your herd's potential with Berg & Schmidt.
It's really interesting to me. I think we've seen a big shift in that. I think COVID drove a lot of that, right? That we've started to realize, hey, we can actually be pretty flexible about where we live versus where we work.
Yeah, exactly. One thing and I'm sure you can echo this too, Gail, but and a lot of people can in my industry, but it's, one thing we realized with COVID is that how important it is to actually get on the farms and see
Mm-hmm.
cattle and see manure and see forage and feeds. And that was really one thing I missed a lot. And through the pandemic, we actually created like a lot of new contracts overseas and whatnot with farms that just simply want us to do remote work. And when the pandemic ended finally, and we were able to get onto some of these farms that we actually never saw in our life, it was just it was incredible. It's like, wow, this is what we've been missing for so long.
Yeah.
For the couple of years that we had things shut down as far as air travel goes, and it was I really missed that component a lot of speaking with farmers, just having a coffee with them and just chatting. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the things I always tell my students in class is that cows can't read. And that's kind of the point I'm trying to drive home when I say that too, is, we can have a perfect ration balanced on paper. We can have our forage analysis in front of us, right? We can have everything nailed down to what the models say a cow's going to do and how she's going to perform. But a cow has no idea what you did there, right?
yeah,
She can't go and read her ration and know how she's supposed to respond. And so, yeah, that's something that I think I spend a lot of time talking to my students about too, is just that, you have to use those powers of observation as well. It's not just classroom time and computer time. And a lot of times I think people think that nutrition work boils down to, well, can I run a ration balancing software? But it's so much more than that, isn't it?
yeah, totally, yeah. And I love that analogy that the cows can't read. The other great analogy is there's three rations on a farm: the one you formulate, the one that's in front of the cow, and the one that the cow actually decides to eat, right? And then there's
Yeah.
the fourth one, the one she digests, of course. So, but yeah, it's you're right. Like, and one of the fascinating things about coming out of that pandemic is not only that we got a better appreciation for the farm visit, and that's really the crux of our ration of our coaching that we give to dairy farmers, is that farm visit. But the image, what we realize is that we can actually supplement that farm visit with a lot of creative communication techniques that really
Mm-hmm.
we weren't utilizing up until the pandemic. I mean, like, for example, just simply just taking your phone and taking a video and walking through the barn and just videoing, and the producer, the manager, giving you their thoughts on what they're seeing. Just zooming into manure. I know that sounds exciting, but to us it is, right? Yeah. So it's just, I think that is one of the good habits we got coming out of the pandemic, is how to couple that farm call, which is the sort of the core of a good nutrition program, with that communication between. So
Yeah. Well, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about this, right? I think one of the things that you're really good at is the human side of dairy consulting and dairy nutrition. And you've already kind of talked a little bit about coaching clients, motivating clients. When you're onboarding a new client, or getting a new client on board, what does that process look like for you?
yeah, great question. So, a lot of times, I've been in this industry for over 20 years, and it's definitely, a lot of things have changed, but what really gets you on the farm is a referral, or
Hmm.
that network, right? So it's either, a producer's really happy with something you're doing for him or her, or the way that you're supporting them, or they, it's seldom is it a magazine ad or an advertisement that gets you onto a farm. It's always that network. Uh, so, um, so when we when we start to work with new farms, um, we go in there with 2 years in one mouth. Okay, that's really important. And the fact is that they're inviting us on their farm. They're taking time out of their schedule to spend hours with somebody new. And
Hmm.
we gotta what the first thing I think about is how much respect I have for that farmer when I go into those situations, because they have so many things on their mind. And usually when you get a call from a farmer to come visit, things aren't great, right? You usually get a call because things are not going well. So it's so we always go in with that mindset of respect and try to put ourselves in their shoes. But that first meeting or call is always asking a lot of questions, right? And really what we're trying to get at is what their hunger is for change. We know they want to change because they've already made that step of calling somebody new in. So we want to try to get a good idea as to where they see themselves going down the road in the future. So we always ask them, of course, at some point, what are your goals? And that's always the differentiator between that good manager and that one that's not so good. Is they got a firm idea as to what their goals are. But we also realize that when we get it called onto a farm that's having troubles, that they may not be thinking about their long-term goals at that time, right? We have to respect the fact that they may be worried about paying their financial obligations that month. Is probably the biggest thing on their mind at that time, right?
So do you think that's the key then to motivating clients, is understanding their goals and where they're coming from? Or do you ever find that sometimes what their stated goals are might not match with what their actual motivational goals are? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. There's a few questions there, right, Gail?
Yeah.
so,
It's a loaded one too. Sorry.
yeah, one thing that I try to remember when I visit a farm, whether it's a current client, somebody we've been working with for 15 years, for example, or somebody that's brand new, is we usually when we go to a farm, we exchange handshakes. Often there's an exchange of coffees, as you know, in Canada, it's usually Tim Hortons, right?
Mm-hmm. Double. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, which is great for our industry. But eventually, after we get the initial social and greeting out of the way, I ask them, "What's important to you today?" And I'll ask that in different ways depending on the type of person the personality of the person I'm talking to. But the crux of the farm call is to ask that question: "What's important to you today?" Because the last thing we want to do is go into a farm call making some assumptions, right? Uh, Assuming we'll get us nowhere. So we always want to be clear when we go onto that call. What's important? So most people will get right to the point. You know, they might say my production is low. You know, I'm only 36 kgs or whatever that is in pounds, 82 pounds. Whereas I want to be 40 kgs or 88 pounds. My butterfat's low. In many parts of Canada and also obviously other parts of the world, including the United States, we're paid primarily on butterfat in a lot of regions. So if their butterfat's only 3.9% versus that 4.25% where they've been running for months before that, then that may be the important thing to them. But a lot of the times it comes down to transition cows.
Yep. Repro problems too. If I have a herd complaining about repro problems, a lot of times I'll go right to what are your transition cows looking like?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I'm not going to, I can't say 9 times out of 10, but the majority of the time when when we're called into a farm, whether it's a current client or a new prospect or customer, it's always transition. And it's usually a metabolic problem that any of the cows are having that day. Or maybe a transition issue that they do not even see. And that's one of the values of getting somebody from the outside to come in, is they may see that, they may catch that, right? So we run into circumstances like that too. So I think, I got a lot of respect for dairy farms. They have a lot going on. And if they can, they're small business managers, they're marketers, they're environmentalists. There's so many roles a dairy farmer has. So I totally respect if they don't know what's going on as far as why their cows are not producing. I totally respect that. But a good advisor is there to help them figure that out and sort of taking that next step.
So speaking of advisors, what are some of your best practices when it comes to working with other advisors on the farm? So they're going to have their nutritionist, they're going to have their veterinarian, they're going to have the person that's selling them semen. They're going to be working with a lot of advisors. So what are some ways to make that team dynamic work on a dairy?
Yeah.
The veterinarian's always wrong, right?
Yeah, exactly, Gail. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Just for the record, don't actually think that. No veterinarians come at me.
So yeah, I always give veterinarians a hard time. I've got a lot of veterinarians that are friends, and that's
We
I
chirp
don't.
each other. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, yeah. They certainly know how to give us nutritionists a hard time, so
Yeah.
they're gonna get it back. But I mean, we're hey, I mean, at our organization, I'm sure a lot of advisors are like this. They see it as a team. That's the way we see it, as a team, right? It doesn't make sense to do anything but support the team. That's how we're going to see progress, right? And that team is
Yeah.
usually the veterinarian. It could be two vets in a situation: the veterinarian that's doing the emergency visits. It could be the one that's doing the reproduction on a weekly or biweekly basis. It could be the farm vet. In some of the farms that we go to in other regions of the world, it's usually 2 or 3 farm veterinarians that you're dealing with, right? There's usually a head vet that you can speak with. So that's a team. The hoof trimmer, obviously, is a huge part of that team. Anybody involved with the agronomy of that farm,
Mm-hmm.
the excellent managers always have an agronomy person or a team behind them to help guide them through the best forage making principles and the highest yield. So there, to us, that's a very important part of the team. Even the guy or girl that's selling inoculants and silage coverings, I mean, they are a really important part of the team too, because
Mm-hmm.
we both know like silage is what a good ration is based on. So, yeah, I mean, we try to get involved with the rest of the team when it's possible, and when the timing's right. So that may be a fairly regular phone call with the veterinarian. It may be actual quarterly meeting where we sit down and consume a pot of chili and some fresh bread and just hash out the dairy comp data. It could look like different things. I think that the important thing is that each farm is unique and they're going to have different needs. So it's going to be different parts of the team you're going to be interacting with to get results. So
What dairy producers who are doing a good job with that team dynamic, what are they doing that's different?
yeah, I have an excellent example of this. Farm I've been working with for probably 15 years, Gail.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, he's in Nova Scotia. He's got a family. He's got some sons involved now too, and just an excellent manager all around. And one of the things that I find, and he's been one of the top management scorecards in Canada for several years, like either in the top 5 or top 2 or even in the top 50 at times. But it's quite an accomplishment to be the top management score with Lactanet.
Yep.
So, but one thing I find that he's really good at, and this is a very shared trait that other really successful managers have too, is they ask a question and they listen. So if they have a concern, they they come forth in a very professional way, in a constructive way. I find that they're there if there's a problem that they have, when they bring that forward. They do that and to encourage open dialogue. And they recognize that the nutritionist is just simply part of the team that's going to help them work through the challenge that they might be having. But that's one thing I find unique is among that really high performing dairy farmers, that they 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 ask a question, they listen, they're very respectful, and they take the time to listen and to implement some of the things that the team as a whole decides to put forward to address the problem. So
Yeah. I've heard you say listening a couple times. You come in with your 2 ears and 1 mouth, and that the producer's job is also to listen. And it makes me think that if more people took that to heart, that our politics might be a little better worldwide today than they are right now.
it'd be so boring though, wouldn't it, Gail?
That's true. Yeah. What would we talk about?
Then there'd be no theater of politics. So, anyways,
Yeah, yeah.
um, yeah, there's the the other thing that I find too amongst dairy farmers, and this maybe is like maybe opening up another topic, but um, there's a lot of times like I've been in the industry plus 20 years, right? And and when I first got in the industry, my advisor David Christensen told me that there's a I can't remember exactly how he said this, but he said there's ideas that recirculate through the dairy industry, and they're on a cycle. It's almost like a fashion cycle for people, right? You see a fashion that was popular maybe 12 years ago.
Yep, like the 90s are back now. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So I liken it to the fashion industry, the dairy industry, and the fact that there's a lot of ideas that come around, and that's good though, right? Because we do forget about some really important things over time, and then somehow it gets popularized again. And for example, one of those things, at least in my opinion, is body condition score. Okay.
I have a body condition score sheet pulled up right now. We're going to do a workshop on that this afternoon with some students. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say. Yeah.
Man, I'm so happy that that's actually part of the training for young dairy people is body condition scoring. So the reason why I think it's coming around again is I think everybody's heard about the high fertility cycle, right? And this is the cycle of this incredible change and movement that we've made in reproduction in dairy farms over the past 25 years. I mean, it bottomed out in the 2000s, and that's when I was first in the industry. And I remember actually, you go on the farms and conception rates would be in the toilet, right? And customers were always asking, what can we feed anything differently? What can we do? And we've one of the things I'm really happy to see that we've accomplished in our breed and in our industry is that we've gotten through that. We've worked our way out of that low fertility that we had in the early 2000s, and now here we are in 2024 almost, and we actually have cows that are conceiving on 1 or 2 inseminations.
Yeah.
And these are rock
semen.
star cattle. Yeah, on sex semen. And these are rock star cattle too. These are cattle sometimes producing 80, 90, 100 kgs at peak lactation. And it's just incredible. It makes me so proud that we had a problem and the whole industry actually tackled it. And there's a lot of reasons for that, right? I mean, there's I think a big thing is we know how to manage transition cows now, and we actually know how to keep cows alive, not only alive but happy when they calve. And the other thing, of course, is protocol breeding. Everybody's adopted really good protocols, or if protocols are not being utilized, then we've adopted different ways of excellent ways of detecting heat, for example, activity, progesterone, so on and so forth. And then, of course, just we've been selecting. So it's genotypical too. We've been selecting for this too for the last 25 years, rather than just milk production and fancy udders, right? So back to the body condition score, though. One of the biggest things that we've kind of maybe at times forgotten about in the industry, and I'm speaking personally, is the importance of body condition score change, and that we don't want to have any more than half, ideally, of a body condition score loss after calving, because that significantly impacts reproduction. And what I think one of the most popular things will be over the next year or two will be the adoption of systems to actually track body condition score on farms. And that's either going to be an excellent managed spreadsheet where there's somebody out there in the farm on a regular basis doing body condition score. It could be a camera over the exit of the parlor, and there's some few companies that are specializing in bringing that to the market now as we speak, or the use of just a camera over top of the robotic milker, which we're seeing already. So there's a lot of ways to do that, but as boring as that sounds, I think that's going to be really popular over the next couple of years, getting that data and then tracking it and doing something with it, right? So
yeah, what's old is new again. Yeah. I think it's just going to get easier if you have the tools and if you're looking to use that data. I think as these precision technologies continue to develop, we're going to have more opportunities to be able to collect and utilize that data. But the utilization is key. I know I've talked to some producers who oh, I had a scale on my robot and it broke and I never replaced it because I'm not really interested in body weights and I didn't know what I was, not that they weren't interested. The comment has been, I didn't know what I was supposed to do with that. So,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
wonder, yeah, I wonder if that's where that team dynamic comes in a little bit too. Because if you're a nutritionist who's listening and curious and talking to a producer, you find out that they have that information, right? And then you look to actually get the most use out of it.
yeah, yeah, precisely. Yeah. Uh, just one more example. Can I give you one more example of this body condition score and how and
Absolutely, yeah.
something really neat I saw? So 2 weeks ago, when I was in the Emirates, the United Arab Emirates, one of the farms, and I actually did a LinkedIn post about this. You may have seen it. One of the farms I visited, a farm that we've worked with a little bit over the years, and I had an excellent visit that day with this producer, and I was so interested. But it was so simple what he was showing me. Really, at the end of the day, and the fact that he did body condition score on over 3,000 lactating cows by himself as a manager
Oh
once a
wow.
month, once a month, and typed typed that into a spreadsheet, and he used that data to make pen change decisions, ration adjustment decisions, and I think what I recall is also breeding decisions as well. So that's an example of a larger scale farm utilizing that data and actually doing it right. That wasn't I was so impressed how much investment that dairy manager gave that, because I really think that helps. And that was a very well conditioned herd too, especially for a desert dairy. So
So yeah, you've spent a lot of time internationally, and some of that I think with your clients, your international clients, but also spent some time volunteering as well. I think I saw on your LinkedIn profile there. So, what are some of the things that you've seen in common with dairies around the world? What do, if you're a desert dairy, a Midwest dairy, a dairy in Alberta, a dairy in Brazil, what are you doing that makes you successful?
yeah, sure, yeah, okay. So yeah, great question. I think that a few of the most important things that we find, no matter where we go in the world, is forage quality, right? And time again, I see that the bottleneck and higher production on these farms and higher intake is the forage quality. And there's some areas of the world we go to where they purchase all their forage needs and they specify what they want for, say, relative feed value, maybe crude protein, obviously things like moisture and toxin levels and molds and things like that. Uh, so it's one thing to purchase your feed and have a certain quality you're aiming for, but it's another thing to produce your own feed and have control over that quality, because there's so many factors that go into making an excellent quality silage. So I would say no matter where we go, that is a common trait. Forage quality is something that usually limits production, no matter where we go in the world. Um, so the other thing is that we're seeing, especially over the last 3 years, is a shrinking margin. No matter
Mhm.
where you go in the world, high commodity prices are being affected similarly, and that basically means that the price of corn, soy, canola, cottonseed, wheat byproducts, they've all gone up 20, 30% over the last 2, 3 years, especially. And what I'm seeing around the world is this pinch, this margin pinch, right? And what it means at the end of the day is that they have less to work with, but it puts an extra focus on managing the details on these farms and coaching them in a direction that they will try to see some improvements in efficiency and economics. So maybe that's one other thing I can mention too, Gail, is that especially over the last 2, 3 years, we've also, and I'm going to say more like 4 or 5 years. We've seen attention given to this feed efficiency ratio or feed conversion efficiency,
Mhm.
and it's especially over the last 2 years when the conversation around sustainability has really ramped up, and methane and greenhouse gas emissions from production of agriculture products. And I'm really happy. We've been advocating feed efficiency ratio, Gail, for like, well over 10 years, but I'm really happy that it's actually getting a lot of attention. So when I traveled around different countries over the past year, I found that no matter where you go, a lot of farmers actually know what their feed efficiency ratio is now. And never have I seen that before. For example, I was speaking in Sweden last week at a really good event put on by Joe Brink. So it's a consultant company there, and every farmer, it seemed to me like every farmer knew what their feed efficiency ratio or the feed conversion was in that country. The other thing that really was fascinating is that they all knew what their ECM was, which is their energy corrected milk. They all knew that right off the bat what the ECM is. So it's really awesome for me as an outsider coming in because I can understand in very similar and having a similar standardized milk when we were discussing what production levels are in cows. So that is one similarity I'm seeing is this attention to feed efficiency ratio. Also attention to heat stress. And this is a really important one. No matter where we are in the world, we're probably impacted somehow by heat stress. Might only be for 4 weeks of the year in a place like Newfoundland. It might be 4 months of the year in a place like Nova Scotia or southern Ontario or many parts of the States, for example, where you're at, not Iowa. Or it might be 9 months of the year or 10 months of the year, like what I see in Saudi Arabia or the Emirates or in Southeast Asia. So, in the best way.
And it's not getting better.
No. Yeah, it's getting a little worse every year, as we all know. And there's a little bit more heat stress every year. And the index that we like to talk about in regards to heat stress is the temperature humidity index, or the THI for short. And that's a international recognized standard for defining what the level of heat stress is on a cow. So, for example, 70 versus an 80 or higher. The higher you go, the more heat stress. So, what we're seeing in the areas that I work in is a gradual increase in that THI. So we might be getting some mild heat stress for about 6 months of the year in a lot of places in Canada now, whereas we only might have had mild heat stress for 3 or 2 months of the year 20 years ago, for instance. So I think one of the most popular things again over the next few years anyways will be putting in good systems on dairy farms in this belt across North America and Northern Europe, where heat stress is really coming on and really affecting the impact of that cow production, and reproduction.
Mm-hmm. And we know too from a lot of the work being done in Florida that that's not just short term; that's a multi-generational effect. That's going to affect the cows and her calf, and maybe even her grand calf too.
Isn't it fascinating? It's so incredible, the research that's being uncovered here, how it can affect multiple generations, even the oocytes of that newborn calf. Incredible, eh? Yeah.
It's insane.
Can I add one more thing to this? What we see common in dairy farms, these are more challenges too. I don't mean to be all bad news here, but we only improve by working on our challenges. And one of the things that I'm really hearing a lot, no matter where I go, is limited colostrum yield. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I can be talking to a farmer in Newfoundland and Labrador, and he or she will be talking with the same concern that I was talking to somebody last week in Finland, a veterinarian who's having issues with colostrum yield too on many of the farms that she works with. And that seems to be a one that I'm not confident that our industry has really gotten a good handle on yet. I'd love to hear your perspective, Gail, on colostrum yield.
That was going to be my next question. Was what do you tell people when they talk about low colostrum yield? That was going to be my follow-up. I'm the one asking questions here.
Yeah.
It's a tough question, right? And it's something we deal with every year. Right around this time of year, we're going to start hearing some of those questions come in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, we see seasonal variation, obviously, which we're seeing now. We see variation based on days carrying calf. It tends to be higher the longer the days carrying calf, for instance, versus obviously early calf where there's very little collagen production. Um, so, and many people have said that simply reduce the metabolizable protein in the transition cow diet 3 weeks pre-calving will probably solve it. Well, if it was that easy, we wouldn't be talking about it still, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I've also heard micromineral deficiencies. I've heard a lot of things, and actually, if you go back and look at one of the LinkedIn posts I put on there 2 months ago, it was on that topic. And there was a lot of experts around the world that weighed in on it, and it was a super amount of information that I was able to learn just from others. But here's one thing that was interesting that was spoken of last week with a veterinarian in Finland, and that's the fact that one thing we all have in common is that we are breeding for more production, and we're achieving more production. So she suggested that it seems to be maybe cause and effect or correlated with the fact that we do have higher production cattle. So I challenged her to to see if that was the truth with other dairy breeds that have not seen the same level of genetic improvement that the Holsteins have across the
Mhm.
world. And uh, she's not sure. I'm not sure if we're seeing that. Say it. I don't want to identify any dairy breeds that we're not seeing the genetic improvement in, but I think we
Right.
all know that there is a couple breeds out there that are not really advancing that fast. So I mean that's
I have Ayrshires at home, so I can take it. Yeah.
okay. Yeah, you said it. All right.
Yeah.
And the the other thing is the fact that we're feeding a lot more straw to cattle now than we did, say, 20 years ago, especially in the transition pen. And is there something in straw that we haven't identified yet? I don't want to pinpoint a certain ingredient, but I think it's something that we don't know yet, obviously, is why this is still a problem.
Well, but you also think, we've started feeding more straw, and that's true, and generally, I'm a fan of doing that. Um, but the colostrum availability issue predates, some of these changes in transition cow diets too. So, yeah, I think you're right. It's a question that I kinda hate, because there's a lot of opinions, and I think there's more opinions than actual research that's been done in this area. So, and every farm, it's probably a different thing, right? It's probably something, um, one
Totally.
farm's issue is probably gonna be different from another farm's issue. So it's a hairy one for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But here's where I think we need to team up as an industry, and this is the only way we're going to get over this. Is we need data. We
Mhm.
have very very little data on what colostrum yield is on farms, amongst farms. Uh, one more example, Gail, if it's okay. Um, in Sweden last week, I had this uh, uh, young pair of brothers that just built a beautiful 200 cow AMS milking system and really smashing out of the park with production and management. Okay, they were 46 to 47 kgs of energy corrected milk, and they showed me their diets, and they looked, in my opinion, very very good. But they had data on
Mhm.
colostrum. They pulled up their spreadsheet at the lunch table on their iPhone, and they showed me every cow that calved over the past year, and they had the exact liters or kilograms of colostrum yield that cow gave in the exact time after calving that colostrum was retrieved from that cow, and also the Brix levels on that colostrum. So I thought that was a perfect demonstration of what we need to do in the industry is to get this data. And I don't know if it's going to be done independently by each farm and we somehow get all this together through extension, or if we get our breed societies to look at it. I'm not sure what the solution is there, but all I know is that we need data before we can fix this problem. So
Yep. Yeah, I think that's would answer a lot of problems actually, and I think we lose I don't know about lose sight of the fact, but we are already very lucky in the dairy industry that we collect so much more data than some of the other industries do. One of the things I've kind of found working with some more of the dairy beef work that we've been doing, um, is that the feedlots don't collect the level of data that our dairy producers are collecting. Like we have every day, you know what your somatic cell count is on your bulk tank. And that in and of itself, even if you're not using herd management software, can be a really important management tool. And we are collecting a lot. Um, and it seems like the more we collect, the more we're like, ooh, and then we could do this. And we should probably also look into this. And we have all these systems in place, right? Where we're already pretty used to collecting data on individual cows. We're really used to looking at that. We're used to pulling in consultants who are able to help with that. We're getting more of these technologies, precision technologies, I think is going to make a lot of that data easier to collect. And so I think it's a trend that's going to keep going, where we're already, I think, really good at collecting a lot of on-farm stuff, but the more we collect, the more hungry we get for more sometimes. And I think we're gonna solve a lot of problems that way.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. It's exciting when we put our brains together, what we can come up with. But I think there is a solution around the corner on this colostrum problem. I don't think it's going to be with us for a long time. I'm confident we can get around it. So,
yeah.
Much like we did with the reproductive cycle that we saw in the early 2000s when cows were not breeding. Well, now we've overcome that on a lot of farms. So, and it's just by looking at data and focusing on that trait. So we'll have to do the same thing with colostrum. It'll just have to be a focus of the trait. That trait will need to be a focus. So,
and I'm hopeful too. I think you talked about having the respect that you have for dairy producers, and I'd agree with that. I think we're working with a great crowd of people that are really willing to take the next step when it comes to making sure we can keep improving as an industry. So I think we can be hopeful at looking forward to some of these solutions.
Yeah, exactly. And back to your original question, but what I see that North America farms have in common with other farms around the world, and that goes back to people. Okay, we all. It doesn't matter if you're AMS or if you've got a robotic arm putting attachments on in a rotary parlor, or if you are getting all of your feed custom made. There's still people on a dairy farm. Okay, and that's probably the biggest thing that we have in common. And it doesn't matter where I go in the world, the better those people are treated and the more they're listened to, the better the output on that farm is. Okay. Yeah. And it doesn't just require good communication, but it requires that consistent training, support, the manager giving that person support to improve, getting the correct chance to improve, or in other words, getting the right style of discipline, so that it helps that person improve, so that they can overcome the challenge or the problem of the day. And of course, no matter where I go to, I do hear about the labor issue, and especially in North America. But
yep.
say even in countries abroad, like the Emirates and Saudi Arabia, and so again, it's an ongoing issue, and it will continue to be with us I'm sure for the full length of our careers, anyways, Gil. So
yeah, well, it'll keep us in business.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, lots of job security in the dairy industry. So yeah.
A healthy digestive tract is a prerequisite for overall calf health and performance. It affects the absorption and utilization of nutrients, and also has an influence on the calf's immune system. Digesterom Calf from DSM Firmenich is a phytogenic product that can help benefit gut bacteria to improve gut functionality, immunity, and performance. Take care of your calves with Digesterom Calf. Visit dsm.com/digesterom to learn more.
Oh, I was just going to say one thing I am very thankful for, when I do travel and work in other countries, is when I get back home to Canada, I'm so grateful for our industry. And I'm sure I'd be the same way if I was going home to the States as well. I'm grateful that we've got excellent breed associations. We've got universities and extension people. These are things that are not found in a lot of countries around the world. And even more importantly, I'm glad we have, really fortunate to have 4-H and FFA for children.
Yeah.
Because that makes a world of difference to developing those good dairy people that are going to be our next generation. And then also just this appreciation to have for people that want to mentor. I've got people I rely on that I have mentors myself, and I love mentoring people myself. But just that giving back and getting help from people, that cycle that we see here in Canada and the U.S. that I'm so proud to see. I know that's the case in many other countries of the world, but it makes me feel so happy when I do return home. So. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a beautiful note to end on. We've had some great discussion today, and I think we probably could have kept going for another couple hours probably, but unfortunately, as you may be able to see, I know those listening to the podcast can't see my camera, but I've got the sun setting behind me, so that's probably a that's probably a cue that it's time for us to wrap up. But before we go into our three main questions we ask all of our guests, where can people find more information about what you're working on?
So yeah, I think probably the best thing would be LinkedIn. I do quite a few posts on that on a weekly basis. And it's meant to share ideas. It's not, it's a lot of times I'll put information out there, and it's meant for me to not only share what I have seen or know of, but more importantly to get feedback from around the world. So it can be found there, and also a YouTube channel. There's videos that I've been recorded discussing nutrition, coaching. If somebody's interested in seeing more of that information, they can go to YouTube and just type in my name.
What's your YouTube channel? I guess I didn't realize you had a YouTube.
Yeah, actually, I think it's their company, Scothorn Nutrition. So.
Okay, all right, very good. I'm not as active on YouTube as I am on LinkedIn, so I had missed that, but we'll be sure to check that out. I'm always looking for videos for class too. So.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, excellent.
It's time for our famous three. Introducing Ultrasorb R3.0, Volac's comprehensive and complete solution to reduce the negative impact of naturally occurring toxins on ruminants. Ultrasorb R3.0 is a species-specific product designed to mitigate the effects of specific mycotoxins in the gastrointestinal tract of ruminants. Ultrasorb R3.0 also offers lipopolysaccharides binding capabilities. Endotoxins such as LPS can contribute to inflammation in ruminants, with energy partitioned to mount an immune response instead of production. Learn more about Ultrasorb R3.0 at volac.com.
All right. Well, with that, we'll move into the three questions that we ask all of our guests every episode. So the first one, I'm actually excited to hopefully get some recommendations from you. So what is your favorite dairy related book or resource?
Yeah, actually, well, it's actually LinkedIn.
Oh yeah.
Like I just said, it's been an excellent resource for myself to learn. And you're well aware of this, Gail, so I'm sorry I can't give you anything new here. But what I respect about LinkedIn is that it's professional. People maintain very, very good conduct on LinkedIn. They always have good things to add, and I find that you don't have to work your way through a lot of sort of loose comments and things like that that you might see on other social platforms. But I just find it so useful for for learning, for putting ideas out there, for even and if there's any way that my post can help anybody, I'm super happy. But I get as much of these posts as others do for sure. And then the other, you say egg related resource, and if I can just add one more little thing here, that would be, and it may not be resource in the sense of what you're thinking when you ask this question, but I consider a mentor an excellent resource. Somebody that's been in the industry that I'm in for a longer period of time, somebody that's worked with a lot of people, for example, somebody that's got experience working with cattle. I consider that a very good resource as well. There's people older and smarter than me. So
that's a great perspective. So what is your favorite and I guess mentoring and LinkedIn can both fit under this as well, but what is your favorite non-agriculture or non-dairy related book or resource?
Yeah. So I'm a podcast fanatic. I listen to a lot of health and nutrition for people related podcasts. We have to differentiate. My wife's actually a dietitian for humans. Okay.
Oh,
so
all right.
We're always find ourselves differentiating between whether we're a dietitian for cows or or whether a dietitian for humans. So I listen to a lot of audio, but I guess I can't sit down, so I'm always trying to listen to a book or a podcast when I'm out walking or even sampling silage or whatnot. So one of my favorite books actually is one that actually I learned a lot from. And it was a book I listened to last year, and it's a book by Matthew Walker, and it's called Why We Sleep.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
I know that sounds like a snoozer. I don't want this to put you to sleep. That's kind of boring, a book on sleep. But he gives a scientific perspective as to the importance of sleep and why it's important, and what are the things that affect it. And I'm not going to say I'm a perfect student of Matthew Walker's, but I certainly got a lot. I understand myself a lot better though when I do have a lack of sleep, and give myself a little more, I guess, lenience if I am under-rested, if I'm traveling a lot or whatever. And then another really good book that I've heard recently is called Metabolical by Robert Lustig. And it's a book on human nutrition, right? I think we can adapt a lot of ideas from human nutrition into the cattle world, and also a lot of the techniques that they use in coaching and motivating people to change, we can also implement in our world. So, yeah.
All right. Very good. I have two new books I got to put on my want to read list on Goodreads.
Yeah, great. I wish I could sit down and read a fiction. I keep, my amazing wife keeps telling me, fiction's excellent, and I'm looking for recommendations. Actually, if anybody wants to put forward a good fiction recommendation, okay.
Do you do historical fiction?
Well, I haven't done much fiction, period.
Or could you do historical fiction?
I think so. Yeah.
Kristen Hanna has a great book. I think it's long. I don't know. I listened to the audiobook on it, but Kristen Hanna has a really great book called The Great Alone. It's about a family who moved up to Alaska. And there's a lot, like her dad was in Vietnam, and so there's some, like, it's very poignant. So it's not a light read, but it is a fiction read. And I think it was I listened to that one on audiobook. I think it was a little longer. So I don't know if you're looking for something shorter or longer, but that's one of my favorite fiction reads recently. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. And our last question, and I think we've spent most of the time talking about this, so it feels a little bit redundant, but if you could summarize just briefly, what do you think sets successful dairy professionals apart from those who are not successful?
Yeah, that's. I think it's simple. It's just one word or two words, I guess. A plan. Okay. Yeah. So, and that plan has to focus on themselves. Number one, like what they want to see themselves being in 10 or 20 years, and that's that. I know that sounds very coachy, but it does. It's very important where that farmer knows or has a good idea what he or she wants to look like in 10 or 20 or 30 years, where they want to be. And then they've also, and that should be, they should be giving attention to their health, their well-being, their family, obviously, and their wealth. And I think the other thing that the plan has to focus on is the people in their lives too. So I think we all get in this trap maybe where we get a little bit too busy sometimes. And really, what I've heard is that that's just a lack of a plan. It's not knowing what to say no to is what tends to lead to that busy state that we're in. It's saying no is the greatest time saver. It only takes 5 seconds to say no. But a lot of us struggle. Personally, I struggle with that a lot. But I think having a plan is really what sets our excellent producers apart from the others.
I actually have a quote pinned over my monitor here so I can see it, because I struggle with saying no as well. It says, if we don't say yes authentically, we say yes resentfully, and that leads to far more problems than if we'd said no in the first place. So that's a reminder to me that
that is excellent. That's amazing. Yeah, and it's over and over again. This So, anyways, Gail,
yeah. Well, Daniel, it's been a great conversation. I wish we had a couple more hours to keep on going. I'm sure we'll have a chance to connect, hopefully in person at some point. If you have any, I don't know, are you going to ADSA this summer? You went last year, but
Yeah, it's ADSA is one of our favorite conferences. I'm not actually sure if I'm going again this year, but I'll be at the Western Canadian Dairy Seminar in Red Deer, Alberta, where I get to have an interesting topic about future dairy ideas, and so that's another place.
Well, and that's in your backyard now.
Yeah, it is, exactly. Yeah. So.
All right.
Excellent.
Very good. Well, it's been great chatting with you. Looking forward to hopefully doing it again before too long.
Thank you, Gail. Again, I really appreciate it, and it's good to get acquainted.